This is a note to future me. Hi, this is Brett Johnson, your host and the owner of Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants. Let's talk about some key strategies to build a strong podcast brand. Developing a podcast brand may be the last thing you think about when putting together your podcast, and this may be why most podcasters fail. The term brand refers to a business and marketing concept that helps people, your listeners, identify a particular company, your podcast, product, or individual. Brands are intangible, which means you can't actually touch or see them. They help shape people's, your listeners' perceptions of your podcast or a company, their products, or individuals. Here's an easy way of wrapping your head around branding. What do people say your podcast is when you're not in the room? Can a person, you, be a brand? Well, anyone can quickly and easily be a brand. You don't need to be famous. Branding is important because not only is it what makes a memorable impression on your listeners, but it allows your listeners to know what to expect from your podcast. A strong brand will help your audience identify with your message and keep them coming back for more content. It also helps establish your topic as a credible source. The best podcasts have a distinctive voice that is personable and authentic, which leads to a loyal following who will continue to listen even if they don't have anything new to say. The key strategies to build a strong brand are define it, match your podcast name to it, develop the look, get it out there, and get it out there consistently. Let's break it down. Define your podcast brand. Now, to create your podcast brand effectively, you need to have a clear idea of the type of the brand you are wanting to create. You need to understand what your brand is. Here's some questions that can help you. What is your podcast's mission? What's your podcast's vision? Who are you targeting as the key listeners to your show? Why should they listen? And what can they expect when turning into your show? Next, match your podcast name to the brand. After defining your podcast brand, decide on a name for your show, but not just any name. You need to decide on a name that strengthens your brand and leaves no doubt about your brand in the mind of your targeted listeners. Your podcast name needs to match your brand. Your podcast name should be unique, catchy, easy to remember, and consistent with the message on your podcast. Put the time in to find the right name. Use Google searches. Brainstorm with your podcast partners, family, and friends. You'd be amazed what will come out of what I call beer storming or bean storming from a colleague of mine who does these sessions around beer storming over beer or bean storming over coffee. Keep the list, let it set for a day or two, and then come back to it with fresh eyes and a clear mind. Let the process work, and you'll have the perfect podcast name that is your brand identity. Develop that podcast brand. Develop your own signature style for your podcast. There are countless things to work together that produce your podcast's unique voice. And that's including your personality, your co hosts, your guests, your interview style, your delivery and tone of voice, your audio logo or that intro music, your expertise in the content area, your connection with your listeners, and that unique angle that you bring to your content. Next, develop your podcast brand look. Use color and imagery to further develop and strengthen your podcast brand's unique identity. Your podcast thumbnail cover art is typically the first thing they see when it comes to your podcast. It's got to be on brand. Great podcast cover art gets listeners to engage with your podcast brand. And then get that podcast brand out there. To strengthen your brand, you need to be out there. Be present with your podcast. This simply means finding other places for your podcast and brand to be seen and heard. Some ideas include, but hey, they're not limited to, guest appearances on podcasts, speaking opportunities at conferences, strategic social media content postings, and tagging key individuals, guest blogging, and networking events. The more places people are able to find your podcast brand, the stronger your presence will become. And keep your brand out there consistently. Implement and stick to a schedule that guarantees you will successfully publish valuable content. To grow your podcast brand, you can't change the type of content and message you're sharing. Maintain your focus to build your authority within your category. A consistent presence of your podcast will solidify your podcast brand, and it's going to help you develop a strong identity. Podcasts are a great medium to interact with audiences and share information. A strong brand is essential for any podcast. It helps listeners identify you as an authority in your niche. It helps you cut through the clutter of podcasts in your category. Build a strong brand for your podcast. Take some time. And these are the steps that can help you achieve this more quickly. Let's talk about what podcasting can do for your business in the next 12 months. Whether you're B2C or B2B, we at Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants can create a strong content marketing strategy that will work for you. Connect with me if you'd like to talk more about this. My calendar is available at mypodcastguide.com, or you can find more at circle270media.com as well. And while you're there, subscribe to my free daily Open the Mic and Speak. It's chock full of podcast news that you may have missed, as well as social media, sales, audio production tips, and insights on how to grow your podcast.